Hello, I'm Dr. Ron England, and I'm going to do a little bit of an example here for you where you can look at a lease or a purchase option. This is Engineering 3613, Engineering Economics, Module 5, Lecture 2. We've been talking about time value of money, and we've also been talking about effective interest rates with compounding interest. So the example that we're going to look at right now is going to be looking at this concept of buying versus lease. So we're going to look at a car with two different options, which are just options that I've pulled simply off of the internet for a small low-end car. And the two options are looking at this with a down payment of $2,000 with the car loan over 36 months with a quoted payment of $372.55. They did not give you the interest rate here, but they did give you an actual payment, so it's easy to calculate the total number of payments that are there. Often you'll see very low interest rates on these types of things because they're looking at financing and building the cost into other pieces. But hey, that's not too bad. And then the leasing outlay is looking at this. What it does is it knocks down that monthly payment to $236.45. You have a much lower fee and fees and signing, which is much lower. But it does have a cash due at the end of the lease. And you also have the purchase option. You have the option at the end of the lease to either return the vehicle or to purchase the vehicle at the end of the lease. So you can see that the cash outlay for the leasing option is much less than the outlay for a buying. But at the same time, if you do not purchase the vehicle at the end of the lease, which I did not put into the calculation of the cash outlay, you're left with not having a vehicle at the end of the lease. Whereas with the buying versus with the purchasing, you do actually have the vehicle. You own the vehicle at the end of the payment period. So we just kind of put all this out, lay this out here. The listed price on both of them at $14,695. That's often, and that APR, I have to look at that APR because I'm not positive that's actually 3.6% that was given. But when I did the calculation of the monthly payments, I'm not sure that that actually came out to 3.6. Reality is many times they'll quote you a number, but they'll actually look at that number. It doesn't necessarily mean that's an effective interest rate. So be very, very wary of this. What you will see all the times is, how about, what would you say if we can get you into this vehicle for $372.55 a month? The leasing option at $236.45 is still much less. Either way, 36-month going on, and a very common option at the lease options is the cash due at the end of the lease. It just kind of looks like another payment towards the end. And what we're going to do here is we're going to assume that the lease purchase option, which has you paying the $8,673.10 at the end of the leasing, is also the same amount of money that you could actually sell the vehicle for if you went ahead and debt financed. You can lay all this out and look at how they actually go here. But what we really want to do in this case is we'd like to calculate that present value. Now, this actually assumes that we have that resale value of $8,673.10 because I'm going to use that for comparative purchases. Now, coming over here, we can easily calculate the present value if you debt finance. You've got the $2,000 that you paid minute one, and then you've got the $372.55, which is the payments over 36 months. That's a monthly payment, 0.5, relatively, so it's 36 months. It's relatively easy to calculate. And then you can actually add in that resale value, or you can take that resale value, and you can calculate that. You can take that out. We want the present value of the resale. The resale is $8,673.10. It's not that hard to calculate the resale, the actual value of that. Now the lease financing. In that case, you had some fees. You had an upfront. We have the payment period over 35. So the calculations are slightly different, but you also have that value, that money at the end. So at the end, the $300, which is actually that $300 which is the fee that you have at the end of the lease period, and it gives you a present cost of the lease of $8,556.90. So what it looks like is that, hey, apples to apples, at the end of the lease you don't have a car, but if you sold the car, in the case that you actually purchased the car, you could have the option of selling it, and you have a much lower present cost. So the present cost of that vehicle is less. So it turns out that in this case, the debt financing is a better option. That is one way of looking at a comparative analysis of these two. Just seeing what that present cost is. Remember, when you're dealing with things like leases, you have to look at that final resale value that's at the end. I could have done the exact same thing by, instead of taking that 8,000, that resale value of the vehicle, I could have just put that into the lease side. It's still going to give me a comparative analysis of the two. I would be comparing against the number 14,24610. I want you to actually look at this and say, hey, it actually makes sense to me. Not, the calculations are still the calculations. So, you are, what I really want you to look at this is when you are looking at values, interest rates, you're going to see APR. Okay. We need to look at the effective interest rate and the effective interest rate based on the actual payment periods that are occurring here when you do the calculations for comparison basis. Payment period and interest periods can actually differ, and that effective interest rate really does make a difference here. But what I really wanted to show you here was a good comparative analysis of two different scenarios and the values that go with those two different scenarios. So I'm hoping that this is useful to you because you're looking at problems that are going to be very, very similar. And when I say, did you consider this? Did you consider that? There's other items that we haven't talked about yet in the class that we do have to actually consider as we're going through and looking at on this. I mean, we made this huge estimate about the resale value, which we could have easily done the other way, looking at the purchase value of the leased vehicle. But is it a decent assumption? Sure, it's a good assumption and allows you to get a comparative analysis of the two, calculating the actual present worth of both of them. So hopefully this was useful to you and gives you an idea. The time value portion really isn't that hard. It's just bringing them all to that equivalent time. Thanks very much, and on out.